Welcome to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. The podcast that covers all things about humans, technology, and particularly the bits in between.
And welcome to this episode of 1202. Today we're globetrotting again. This time we're off to Canada to explore the challenges and issues there, in particular what it's like to be an early careers ergonomist. But before that, the EHF 2024 conference is coming up. The program has been finalised. I'm quite nervous because it's the first time I've given a paper there in a good couple of years. So I've got a paper and a few of my team have got bits in the paper. We're actually doing the award ceremony live this year for the past few years. Well, since COVID, it's always been remote. So we're actually going back to live the award ceremony, which I'm really excited about to celebrate those amazing people, amazing projects that are out there. So if you're going, do pop along, do let us know, do say hello if you're there. You'll either see us wandering around or maybe in a bar somewhere. So come and say hello, and it would be great to meet you. But back to today's episode. Today's guest is an early careers human factors practitioner in Canada and a representative on the Association of Canadian Ergonomists National Student Council, Madeline Shoot. Welcome, Madeline, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Cool. So before we get into, we're going to talk about what Canadian ergonomics is like and what it's like to be an early careers ergonomist in Canada. But before that, it would be fantastic to get to know you a bit more for our audience first. So can you tell us a bit about you, what your current role is and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so a little bit about me before we get into the ergo talk. So my background is in kinesiology and sports medicine. So that's where I really come from. That's my passion. I'm an associate ergonomist at Darkcore Limited, which is a casters and wheels manufacturing company. So they create an ergonomic product and ergonomic series of products. And so a big focus of my role here, especially in the past few months and the upcoming months, is product testing and evaluation. So using my ergonomics background and then applying it to the product, because we have a huge team, or a really great team of engineers, but I'm the only ergonomist here. So I bring in that human perspective that a lot of the times isn't considered.
Yeah.
And in the testing. So it's performance testing, primary, secondary risk factors I'm really interested in, and then how those change throughout time. So from brand new to the lifespan of this product. But then I also help out, because I am the only ergonomist, kind of across the board. So I help out with our marketing team being like a subject matter expert. So I'll do interviews or write blogs, things like that, or other parts of the team as well. I'll do cart audits for our customers and things like that. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's kind of across the board here.
I was going to say that sounds brilliant. And you seem to have that almost the typical human factors thing of you're the one person who's there and having to spread themselves really thin over a whole bunch of things.
I am really loving it. I'm only about 10 months into this position, into my career, really. And it's a learning experience, and I'm getting to do everything. I mean, even now, we're launching a new website soon, and I'm getting to apply UX and UI and human-centered design approaches, or at least weigh in on it, which I didn't think I'd be able to do in a physical ergonomics position. Yeah, really cool.
And how are you finding working in that sort of, I say there's a lot of engineers and things like that. How are you finding being able to make your voice heard in that sort of environment?
It's difficult at times. I think just we come from a different mindset. I think a lot of the times, especially, and this is kind of a unique thing to Canada. In Canada, 9 times out of 10, your ergonomist is coming from kinesiology, where in the States, they're probably an industrial engineer, an engineer of sorts, and then adapted ergonomics. So the way we think about things, although we might come to the same conclusion, might not always be the same path. So advocating for the human in that sense can be challenging, but learning to speak in their language, no matter who it is. So if I'm talking to engineers or marketers or just the layman person, I need to understand how they speak, what's important, what's a pain point to them, and then they actually start to hear me and the ergonomics and the human factors.
Brilliant. So I say you mentioned you've been in this role for 10 months now, and this is your 10 months into your career. Why human factors in the first place? How did you find it? Why did you get here in the first place?
Yeah, so this is a little bit long-winded.
Go for it.
But yeah, like I mentioned, my background is in sports science, and I had a love of like biology more so. That's why I went into it, and sports. Just
Hmm.
generally, I love sports. And then I found myself really liking biomechanics, which was crazy for me because in high school, I was always told, don't take physics. It's the hardest science. You're going to hate it. So I didn't. And then I was first exposed to it later in my uni career, and I loved it. And it wasn't because I was naturally good at it, I found. I think a lot of people tend to gravitate towards things that they just are good at, and then they end up liking it because they're so naturally good at it. And it wasn't my case in biomechanics. Like I worked hard to try to figure out moment arms and everything. So, and I really loved gait analysis specifically, just how someone walks. For some reason, I loved it, but I couldn't do that for my whole life. But I could see, I could understand. I like the problem solving aspect of it, and which I think I was really lucky to have. And I think
Okay.
working hard to get good at something was more rewarding. And then just because there was a great professor, Dr. Diane Gregory, in my fourth year. She was really well known in the university, and she was holding this one ergonomics course. And I thought, whatever, it's fourth year. Let me try something. I don't really know what I'm doing next year. In first year, I thought I was going to be a physiotherapist, but that's out the door now. I don't know. So yeah, I took her course, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Going through the Snook tables and the old NIOSH lifting equations, it just like it did something for me in my brain. It was checked off all the boxes.
Yeah.
And then she introduced me to the postgraduate program I'm in, or I was in. I did it in London, Ontario, so just a little bit outside of Toronto. And again, it was, now there's two of them of a kind in Canada. But at
Okay.
the time, Fanshawe College was the only one to have an ergonomics postgraduate program, because a lot of the times, and I think we spoke about this too, is that there's not a lot of postgraduate options
Yeah. Okay.
for ergonomics and human factors, masters, PhDs. So this was a really cool one. 8 months in school, 2 month co-op, and they had like a job retention rate of like 95%. So a lot of people were getting jobs right out of this, which
Yeah.
was great for me as a broke student. I was like, okay, something I love and some
Still need the
money.
money.
I can get behind this. Yeah. So then I came into this position into my career here because I did some research for Darkcore, just how their ergonomics currently was in their facility. Because they make an ergonomic product, they wanted to turn the focus inwards and go, okay, how can we improve ourselves? And then through that research and some implementation, I interned here, and then they loved me clearly, so I'm here.
Brilliant.
No, but they have some great people here, so it's been a real pleasure.
That's really interesting in terms of you saying that actually somewhere the size of Canada still doesn't have much in the way of ergonomic options. Um, is that is that literally across the board? There is like that small handful of courses, or is it was that more just local to where you're at?
Great question. I know Fanshawe up until this like school year was the only program in Canada of its kind.
Wow.
So that's, which is crazy because this
Yeah.
was what's different about Fanshawe's program, is it's very applicable. So you're in field. Unfortunately, I was kind of still on the tail end of COVID, so less in person, but otherwise you would have been out there on the shop floor right away with a force gauge. And that's not something you typically get in a master's
Yeah.
or a PhD, because they're more research based. Although I know there's some universities, I believe like Brock University in St. Catharines has a pretty good master's program. But with that, it all depends on your advisor. If they believe in, physical and getting in person over or in to complement research, then I could see it being a really beneficial program. But yeah, it's that. So it's Fanshawe, and then it's also Conestoga College, which is in Waterloo. So pretty much the same, not too far away. Also, all
Yeah.
in Ontario, is another college, more, I believe, applied program where you're getting
Right.
that in person and stuff like that.
That's really.
Yeah, really the only one like that.
Yeah, that's I mean, we can see it in the UK. We have obviously a few providers, but then size comparatively, we're tiny compared to Canada, and that
Yeah.
kind of makes sense. But to have almost the similar or slightly less options for somewhere as huge as Canada, we clearly all need to move over there. It sounds like there's bags of opportunity.
Well, so you would think so. I think you bring up a great point because although we have so many people and we have so much land,
Yeah.
literally, and I think we're in a lot of cool niches in Canada. It's there needs to be a lot more advocating for ergonomics within Canada for it to really flourish, I think.
Cool. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll take a quick break, and then we're going to go
Yeah, sure.
and really dive into what the ergonomics scene in Canada and dive into that a bit more, if that's okay.
You are listening to 1202, the Human Factors podcast. We wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you for your support. You can help further by rating us through your podcast provider, sharing us through social media, and telling your friends and colleagues. Let's work together in raising awareness of the value in putting users at the center of what we do.
And welcome back. We're here with Madeline Shoot, where we talked about early careers, but also looking at the ergonomic state in Canada at the moment. So, Madeline, welcome back. Talk to us then about you mentioned in the first part of the show about there not being much in the way of teaching of ergonomics in Canada. There's very few courses there. What is the industry like in Canada for human factors? Are there stacks and stacks of opportunities there and companies who are just waiting to take people on, or is it just still a very, immature scene over there, and actually there's not many jobs to be had?
That's a great question. I think, unfortunately, I have to agree with the latter half, is that I think there's not the opportunity yet, but that doesn't mean it's not to come. What Canada has that's really cool, you mentioned industries, and because I was thinking about Canadian industries, and there's a little bit of background here, is that in Canada, everyone who lives in Ontario, specifically Toronto, there's this stereotype that we think that we're all of Canada, like we're it's us, all of us. So when I'm thinking about industries, I go, oh, we're not that different. We're like everybody else. And then I think about like places like Alberta, where there's oil rigs, or we have a lot of mining, fisheries, forestry, stuff like that, where ergonomics becomes really unique. But in the way of education and in that way, and then going into the job market, it is limited. And I believe it's because there's not a complete adaptation of ergonomics across the board. We're still very much seen as an expense to a company. Right. So unless the companies, like the fabric of their being spews ergonomics, it's really hard to fight. You're fighting tooth and nail for every change. Because sometimes maybe they're like, oh, you have a lot of injuries, you need an ergonomist. Well, they don't want you there in the first place, so it's hard to get done what you want to get done the way it should be. Right. So there has to be this kind of broad acceptance, and something you see in Canada across the board, and I see this a lot, is that we follow the states with everything. So although there's not much opportunity now, there's a lot just across the border. So we are next up. So it's because once they do it, we follow right after. So,
or at least that gives you, I guess that gives you some forewarning and appetite for what's going to come.
Kind of get a taste, yeah.
Yeah. So, how are ergonomists organised in Canada? Obviously, here in the UK, we have a Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors. In the States, you have HFES, things like that. What's your equivalent? What's your professional body?
Right. Oh, I always mess up the abbreviation. There's a lot of C's. It's it's the Center for I believe the Accreditation for Professional Ergonomists. CCCPE is the governing body. So we have set a couple different levels. So I'm an associate ergonomist. You become an associate ergonomist by completing certain education and work requirements or hours in the field, which is a great avenue. And then it leads you to getting your CPE, which would be like a full practicing ergonomist after 5 years of work. And you can speed that up to 4 years, I believe, if you gain a mentor. So although education is limited, the way they've kind of bridged the gap is through mentorship, I believe. They really advocate for that. Yeah. And then ACE is also, I want to include kind of in the advocate side for ergonomics as well. So the Association of Canadian Ergonomists, they do a lot in the way of networking and educating others about ergonomics, and then also bringing ergonomists, human factors practitioners together to problem solve and network. They do workshops a lot, and they have a great forum as well, for students and practitioners alike to go through on their website.
Cool. So what do you think in Canada at the moment? What are the particular challenges you're facing? I mean, you've already mentioned about there not being much appetite for human factors, but are there particular human factors challenges out there that you think are ripe to get people to get stuck into?
Like currently in Canada?
Yeah.
Okay, so the current challenges in human factors, aside from kind of the adoption of ergonomics in Canada, I wouldn't say this is too specific to Canada, but I can see a challenge being like adaptation of different more advanced processes. So like we think about like the implementation of AI and tech. So I
Yeah.
think bringing that into the workforce might be a little bit more challenging because we are already, I believe, a little bit behind compared to others around the world. And yeah, I'm trying to think in terms of Canada, like um yeah, I don't know, specific to Canada. I think everyone talks about weather in terms of human factors. So then
Yeah.
like I'm looking outside, I'm like, we just had a blizzard, so there's a lot more we have to consider in there as well, and because of those specific industries too. Yeah, maybe we'll circle back. I gotta think about that one for a second.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting though, because you're right. Where here in the UK, it tends to be just cold and wet with the occasional bit of sunshine, and we develop our products to reflect that. And if you kind of for the size of it, for the breadth of it, you do have such a variety of weather across the entire piece. So therefore, it makes sense that there would be you have to take into account a much broader range of things to be able to do that. So
Yeah, exactly. Whether the specific industries, and not to harp on this point, but with us following the states, like you
yeah,
see this in the healthcare. So doctors, some of the best doctors in Canada, in my experience, I've seen them leave and go to the states just because of opportunity,
yeah,
whether that be financial or cutting edge research. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to see the same things with Canadian ergonomists. And I'm unfortunately at fault. I'm also looking at the states because of the opportunity, and they're just doing the coolest stuff. So I want to go there. And that just means we have less ergonomists in Canada for our unique industries, our unique environments to help help these workers not injure themselves. So I can really see that being an issue.
So yeah, I mean that certainly sounds. I mean, we have a global challenge to try and raise the number of HF people anyway, because
Yeah.
it's either a stagnant or even in fact when you look at global numbers, it's actually declining. So it's interesting that you sort of highlighting that if people are happy to go where the not just the money is, but where the cool stuff is, where the cool challenges are, aren't they?
Yes.
And so that is a so presumably that must be, in your opinion, like the biggest future challenge that that you guys have got as well is how to retain people.
Well, they kind of like add up, right? It's the straw that broke the camel's back. So it's okay, well, if not enough companies are going to adopt ergonomics and human factors practices in Canada, then research is limited in those fields. So then people can't do as much. Now they're like, okay, well, where can I go to do more?
Yeah.
And then we lose the great people, and that's unfortunate. I would love to keep them here, even though it's freezing cold.
So as an early careers practitioner in this field and the circumstances you've got, what support have you got around you? So do you, if you still got a mentor, do you have other people that you can, when you just want to bounce ideas off somebody, where do you go? How does that happen for you?
Yeah, that's a good one. Because I don't work in a team, which I would love to in the future work on a big human factors team. I have a lot. I've been very fortunate to be close with a lot of my professors from my postgrad, so I will reach out to them. And I'm very close with some people on the Applied Ergonomic Society. They have some committees that I communicate with those people as well. They're people who are well into their careers, probably more so on the tail end. So when I go to talk to them, I get the wiseness, which is really good sometimes. I think being a young professional, we're constantly, all over the place and probably stressed up to our ears. So it's nice to hear somebody go like, you're okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. There's tomorrow. You're fine. And then sometimes it's also really fun to be like, hey, I thought of this cool idea. And I'm lucky enough to have a great team here too, that although they're not ergonomists, they should be awarded the designation. They've worked so much in manual material handling that when we talk and I talk about these cool, innovative ideas I got, we can have those truthful, real conversations because they also understand the subject.
Right.
And that's really cool. They come from a different background, which is great to hear too. A lot of them studied business and then found themselves selling an ergonomic product. So I get to hear about their experience too.
That's fantastic. At least you've got that I guess support network in place, so you can be able to do that. Which I think a lot of people who are human factors practitioners, there's a lot of us who've done the whole one-man band thing, who've been that sole person within an organization, and sometimes it can get pretty lonely. So them outside organizations, them outside networks, the people that you can lean on are so critical, I think, particularly in our profession.
I agree 100%.
So that's been a really nice insight into what sounds like an emerging profession in Canada about where we're at. So what we're going to do is going to take the final break, and then we're going to come back and ask you the final 3 questions.
Okay, sounds good.
Just before Barry gets to the final 3, my name's Nick Rome. Let me tell you about this. Technology in our world is evolving at a phenomenal pace, and keeping up with what that means in the human factors world can be challenging. That's where Human Factors Cast comes in. Human Factors Cast is a weekly podcast that highlights and breaks down stories that are chosen by you, the Human Factors community.
New York State is giving out hundreds of robots as companions for the elderly.
Buttons in cars are safer and quicker to use than touchscreen.
A prototype just achieved a major milestone that actually fits the description of a flying car.
The show provides perspective based on experiences from different domains and different industries. We even cover some of the hottest conferences in the field. On this episode, we're recapping EHF, Ergonomics and Human Factors Conference, Neuroergonomics Conference, Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, UXPA International. Join me, Nick Rome.
And me, Barry Kirby.
Every Friday morning when Human Factors Cast drops on YouTube and your favorite podcast directory. And remember,
it depends.
And now I'm going to send it back over to Barry for the final 3.
So these final 3 questions, I ask everybody them. So what is your go-to book or paper that you use repeatedly? That's the Bible of what you do.
Okay, so I couldn't get one because I have different ones for different reasons.
Yeah.
The current one I'm reading is The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. I want to give credit there. Love it so far. I think it's really great. The paper I use, or I guess I would more say call it a tool now, is going to be that study done by Liberty Mutual where they created the like the push-pull, the lift analysis. So I read that. I go through that paper all the time. That's one of my biggest resources. But in terms of like fun books, I love The Great Indoors. I'm blanking on the author now, but it was an amazing book that kind of merged behavior change with how our environment contributes to that. So it had a little bit of interior design aspects, but also it included for accessible design, which goes away from just looking at physical disabilities, but also cognitive ones. And how can we design to include everybody? And I love that.
Cool. So this is going to sound a bit weird given you're at a early careers student, but before you sort of found the human factors domain, and you realize where you were going on your career path, what advice would you have given your younger self?
Gosh, yeah, I'm not that young. Like I'm still young. I'm still a kid. Yeah, I think just don't stress that much. What my mentors tell me now, take a breath. But also like as long as you stay true to who you are and what means something to you, which is making sure, taking care of people, looking out for their well-being, you're going to land in something that you love. And that's all that matters at the end of the day.
So we've looked like really, and that's like I said, that's really here and now. If you fast forward to you're looking at you're thinking of retirement, coming to the end of your career, what would you like to be remembered for?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I get another long-winded response. I can feel it, but something that I heard early on. I was in a workshop, and I think he was a corporate ergonomist for Amazon, and he said, we don't do what we do to make you better at your job or to work faster, to make your work life amazing. We do what we do so you can go home and pick up your kid, and like it gives me shivers every day I think about that, and I would love to be remembered for something like that, caring about the person in everything I do.
That's brilliant. Madeline, thank you ever so much for sharing your insights and your experiences so far. I'm sure that everybody who's listened to this will be able to chime with a lot of the feelings and the nerves and clearly the excellence that you're delivering. If people want to get in touch with you to either share stories or anything like that, how would they be able to do that?
I would say reach out on my LinkedIn, so just my full name.
Perfect, and we'll put the link of that in the show description. So thank you, Madeline, and thank you all for listening and watching. If you like what you've been hearing, or you want to ask questions, or you want to do anything like that, do comment where you're finding this and share it with your friends, with your colleagues, because word of mouth is the best advert for what we do and to be able to share this content. So thank you, and we will see you all on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Please do get in touch with your thoughts, questions, and comments. You can contact us on social media such as Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at 1202 Podcast. See you next time. And remember, it's more than just common sense.